Good morning to everyone in Europe and Africa. Good evening, good afternoon to everyone in Asia and Asia Pacific. And good night, or else a very early good morning to everyone in North, Central and Latin America, as well as the Caribbeans. Your Excellencies, respected guests all over the world, a very warm welcome back to day 2 of our InsuResilience Global Partnership Annual Forum 2021. For those of you who were not able to tune into day 1, please let me introduce myself to you very briefly and also give you a short summary of what's happened yesterday. So my name is Monica Jones. I'm a TV news anchor at German International Broadcaster DW, and I've had the great pleasure to participate in the IGP annual forums from day 1, and I'm certainly happy to be back to also guide you through the program of this year's annual forum. So day 1 was a very, very busy and insightful day. After a series of welcome messages, we heard from voices of the partnership through Ms. Inessa Grace, a youth representative from Rwanda, and US Aid Administrator Samantha Power. Dr. Shen then announced the launch of the evidence roadmap. We had the Nobel Prize winner, Professor Abhijit Banerjee, sitting down with Ms. Ekoswehi Iyahin of the Insurance Development Forum to talk about the need to strengthen the underlying economic and crisis risk financing system and the role of evidence in our field. There were also 3 leaders' dialogues, the first on premium capital support, the second on public-private partnership, and then the third was with the CEOs of the risk pools, all addressing how to scale up climate and disaster risk finance and insurance solutions. And lastly, there were also 2 regional sessions for Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean, where speakers discussed both political ambition and implementation in their regional context. Now, day 1, of course, also started, or day 2 rather, started with a very busy and very interesting regional session with implementation insights from Asia and the Pacific, followed by a short networking session for all of you, and that is where you're just joining us from now. Day 2 will also have a lot of other things coming up. It's only just begun. So we will have a brief opening from Ms. Mami Mizutori, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction and head of the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Now, this will be followed by the final leaders' dialogue on inclusive insurance and building the resilience of smallholder farmers. And then we will start our breakout sessions, where you're invited to enter a breakout room on a topic of your choice. We have a broad array of themes you can choose from, including acting ahead of crisis, monitoring and evaluating impact, heat stress, and much, much more. I'll mention it later again. And I'm sure there is something that will pique your interest. Now, these breakout sessions are intended to be smaller in scale, more intimate and engaging with your speakers, where you can really feel like you are part of the conversation. Now, obviously, because of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, this is still a fully digital conference, which means that we all meet and use an online platform. So in order to fully engage, you need to know how to handle our conference platform. So let me just bring you up to speed very briefly again. Clearly, you're watching the live stream. That's very important. And right next to the live stream, on the right-hand side, you see the chat box where you can submit questions to our speakers. Below the live stream, you can see the agenda, so you can plan your day ahead with all the different sessions mentioned. When you click onto one of the sessions, it'll open up and give you more information on the content of the session and also information on the various speakers. And also below the live stream, you will later then see the buttons for the breakout sessions, so you can pick the one that takes your interest. And maybe we should just figure out actually who all of you are, because we can't see each other eye to eye. And it would be very interesting to know where you're coming from, not in terms of country, but rather your professional background, your interest in the actual topic. So let's do some polling. And the question would be for you, which organization or sector do you belong to? And there are 5 possible answers, so all you have to do is click on the one that actually corresponds with your. So it's governmental organization, there's NGO, there's academia, there's the private sector, and there's none of those, something else. Unfortunately, I won't be able to ask you what that other thing is, but it would give us a clear idea. And you can see already that we get some responses. Sadly, I do not see what these responses correspond to, but I would say that about 50% right now belong to governmental organizations. It's still jumping. We have about 10% NGO representatives here with us, 25% academia, 25% private sector. I think that's a very interesting mix, especially as we learned yesterday that we really have to engage with each other and talk with each other to understand each other's point of view in order to move things forward and move from political ambition to implementation. I think that's one of the key phrases that we heard yesterday. So thank you very much for participating in this polling. And that means we're now ready to formally open day 1. And that is not my job. For that, I would like to hand over to Ms. Mizutori. Ms. Mizutori, over to you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Good morning from Geneva, Excellencies, Secretaries, and all members and friends of the InsuResilience Global Partnership. This is a great honor for me to welcome you and to open the second day of our virtual event as we move from political ambition to implementation of climate and disaster risk finance and insurance solutions. Driven by climate and conflict, humanitarian needs are at their highest ever, with 1 in every 33 extreme in every region. Interacting with vulnerabilities made the world's population, even with
Apologies, Ms. Mizutori. We appear to have run into some technical difficulties. The sound is breaking up, so sadly we've missed quite a lot of your intervention there just now. Can you still hear me? It appears that we've lost Mami Mizutori altogether. I would assume, given that this is really important to set the tone for the day, that we will try to get her back, of course. Having said that, this again is a very, very densely packed day with lots of other high-level speakers, and I also believe that the panel for the leaders dialogue, which would follow next, is already gathering. Perhaps I can give you a little teaser, an idea what to expect there, because we will have Ms. Catherine Pulvermacher. She's executive director of the Microinsurance Network. She will host that leaders dialogue, which will come up shortly, and she will welcome Ms. Olga Speckhardt, head of Global Insurance Solutions, Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture, member of the board of directors, ACRE or ACRI, Africa Limited, Swiss Capacity Building Facility board chair. There will also be Mr. Lorenzo Chan, he's the president and CEO of Pioneer Incorporate, and Ms. Maria Teresa Zappia, Chief Impact and Blended Finance Officer, Deputy CEO, Blue Orchid. Why is this session important? Because it will comprise a structured discussion into how climate change is impacting the lives and livelihoods of small farmers, opportunities for insurance and risk management at micro and meso levels, and actions needed to scale up CDRFI in agriculture. So this is coming up as soon as all those panelists are here. And again, just to remind you, because this is something that I noticed yesterday, I mean, everybody always has an awful lot to say, so it's very, very difficult to keep an eye on the clock, and it's very difficult to get all the questions out there. But do submit your questions. Do engage. That chat box is there for you to really tell all the moderators of the various sessions, also the breakout sessions later on, what you want to know, what is important to you. So if you submit your questions or even comments, that is very, very helpful. Even if there isn't time for that particular session to pick it up, it is something that gives everybody involved, everybody with access, to get an idea what is really important, what you need to know. And I'm just hearing that Mami Mizutori is back with us. Apologies, we did have problems hearing you, so let's just start again from the very top, because we don't want to miss it. Ms. Mizutori, over to you.
Thank you, Monica. Can you hear me better this time?
Wonderful right now. Let's fingers crossed it stays that way.
Thank you. Excellencies, secretaries, and all members and friends of the InsuResilience Global Partnership, it is a great honor for me to welcome you and to open the second day of our virtual event as we move from political ambition to implementation of climate and disaster risk finance and insurance solutions. Driven by climate and conflict, humanitarian needs are at their highest ever, with 1 in every 33 people globally in need of assistance and protection. However, every year, those needs exceed the humanitarian support raised by the international community. As highlighted by the recent report of IPCC, human-induced climate change is intensifying weather and climate extremes in every region. On top of that, the average global temperature could rise by 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial level by the early 2030s, much earlier than predicted. This year alone, the world has seen devastating floods, droughts, extreme heat, and many other hazards interacting with vulnerabilities made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic, resulting in severe health and economic impacts. Already, approximately 30% of the world copes with deadly temperatures for at least 20 days a year, and this number is expected to rise to nearly half of the world's population, even with drastic reductions to carbon emissions. The pandemic is estimated to have pushed an additional 97 million people into poverty last year, and in combination with extreme weather events, this is impacting global hunger and poverty. Unfortunately, despite a growing acknowledgement of the need to invest more in resilience building, the financing gap for adaptation and disaster risk reduction remains wide, as highlighted by a report that my organization launched on 13 October, the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. But we actually know that every dollar invested in risk reduction and prevention can save up to $15 in post-disaster recovery. We also know that $1 invested in making infrastructure disaster resilient saves $4 in reconstruction. Understanding that risk drivers interact with each other and managing exposure and vulnerability are essential for development to be sustainable. In the past year, we have seen that the political ambition to support vulnerable communities has indeed grown. As an international community, we have improved our understanding of the positive impact of pre-arranged risk financing and having anticipatory measures in place in case of disasters. At the same time, we need to push even more for strong implementations and impact to make this vision of support for vulnerable communities possible. This is the precise reason why UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction is making an appeal to manage the climate emergency through 3 key actions. 1, let us raise ambition for reducing and managing risks due to climate change, and for this we need a 50-50 share between adaptation and mitigation in the required $100 billion climate financing for developing countries annually. Second, let us significantly increase support for averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage. The full spectrum of risk should be addressed, including risks from extreme and slow onset events triggered by climate change, as well as other hazards. And third, let us accelerate predictable and risk-informed investments in financing. All climate and development investment in financing should be predictable and risk-informed to better respond to longer-term planning needs. We are turning this call at my organization to action. A comprehensive climate and disaster risk management program supports 40 least developed countries and small island developing states so that their risk assessment contains all information to make them a reliable common basis for their national disaster risk reduction strategies and also their national adaptation plans. Over 110 countries are using disaster loss and damage databases with our support, and over 150 countries are reporting through the online Sendai Framework Monitor on their progress in disaster risk reduction. And these mechanisms provide the relevant metrics and data to assess the impact of climate emergency and to identify necessary preemptive actions. We have strengthened partnerships, importantly, with the private sector, including the insurance industry, and we are jointly developing at this moment a global index for risk and resilience. I'm happy to see that our messages and actions are resonating well in this forum. The InsuResilience Global Partnership brings together over 100 key stakeholders in the climate and disaster risk finance and insurance space, an invaluable tool to help reduce disaster risk and manage residual impact after disasters. The InsuResilience Global Partnership is working steadily to advance its Vision 2025, and that is an important reason why we are here today. Under the vision, there are so many aspirational goals. In 2025, 500 million poor and vulnerable people to be covered against climate and disaster shocks, and 80 vulnerable countries to have developed comprehensive disaster risk finance strategies. But this can only happen if political ambition is translated into implementation. Yesterday, the InsuResilience Annual Forum 2021 hosted a number of high-level leaders' dialogues. We have already heard about this from Monica. And today, as Monica said, there are going to be so many exciting leaders' dialogues and breakout sessions. There's a session on inclusive insurance, building resilience of smallholder farmers, one on nature-based solutions and digitalization. There is, as Monica said, something for everybody to choose from. So the key topics for scaling up solutions, increasing accessibility, and ensuring the solutions have the intended impact if we can all join and if we can all discuss today in this important forum. Excellencies, members, colleagues, I invite you not only to participate in these exciting sessions on this second day, but also to shape and support actively together the climate and disaster risk finance and landscape to increase knowledge, effectiveness, and to find innovative and smart solutions. I wish us all a fruitful and engaging discussion that I'm sure will continue into COP26 next week. Over to you, Monica.